Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and today I'm going to show you how to work a left and right lifted increase in your knitting. So, of course, an increase is a way of adding a stitch to your knitting to make the piece wider. And when we work an increase, there are lots of different kinds of increases and different ways to work them. They all give a little bit different effect, and I'm going to show you the lifted increases, and a lot of times increases are actually directional. So an increase can either lean to the right or lean to the left, and sometimes we need to know both in the same project to get the look that we need and get the shaping to work out the way we need it to. So my swatch here is in bulky weight yarn, and this is kind of like a sample of what a raglan sleeve shaping might look like as far as like a small portion of the shaping. So right here, this is my increase line, and I have right lifted increases coming off of it this direction, and left lifted increases coming off of it in this direction. So this is also called a raised increase, and these types of increases, as far as the lifted increases, tend to be more subtle in their effect on the fabric, not because of the amount of stitches that you add, but because of the look. It does not add as distinct of a look as far as, having certain funny little marks in your knitting where your increases are. Now, some of these look a little bit wonky, and that is because I've purposely not gone through and adjusted them, because we are going to be lifting the stitch below the stitch on the needle and using that to work our increase into. So of course, when you work these increases, you will need to work them in the places called for in your pattern. But in this swatch, I am pretending that this is a raglan sleeve line. And normally for a raglan sleeve line, you have your increases on either side of a stitch marker, and on both sides of the line you are increasing every other round, or every other row if you're working back and forth. So I'm going to show you how to work the right lifted increase and the left lifted increase. And these are not super difficult to work. So what I've got right here is I need to knit across until I have one stitch left before the marker, and then we'll work the right lifted increase into the stitch on this side of the marker, then we'll slip the marker and work the left lifted increase into the stitch on this side of the marker. Alright, so I have one stitch left before the marker, and now we're going to work the right lifted increase, and that means that the stitch that we increase is going to be tilted or leaning to the right of the stitch that we're working into. So as you can see, the stitch column that we are working into here is actually appearing to be split, and it appears that it actually goes this way and that this is one stitch column, but it's not. It's because we are taking one side of this stitch column and increasing out of it, which gives the appearance that this right here is all one stitch column going the other direction. And that is often why this is used for raglan increases, because it just creates a very nice, clean, smooth line with no weird bumps in it or anything else. So what I'm going to do is, if we look right here at the stitch on the needle, which is the one we're working into for our right lifted increase, the stitch on the needle is of course the loop that's going around the needle, but we want to actually pick up the stitch below the loop on our needle. So this right here is the stitch below, and what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the right leg of that stitch. So as you can see, it kind of makes a V shape where there's a strand of yarn on this side and another strand on this side. We're going to pick up the right strand, which is the right leg of the stitch, and we're going to lift it up and set it on the tip of the left needle. So this is what this kind of looks like at this point. So now I'm going to insert my right needle into that stitch that we lifted and knit into it as normal, lift it off the needle, and then I will insert my right needle into the stitch that was already there and knit into it as normal and lift it off the needle. So you can see how we've just created two stitches out of one. So I will show you this again, so don't worry, but I'm going to go ahead and slip my marker, And now we're going to work the left lifted increase. So the left lifted increase is a little bit different in the sense that we are not picking up the lifted part of the stitch before we knit the one at the top. So for the right lifted increase, we knit into the lower stitch first and then into the stitch above, which is the one that was already on the needle. For the left lifted increase, we're going to knit into the stitch that's already on the needle first, and then we're going to come down here and pick up the lifted part of the stitch. So this is the stitch we just knit that's currently on the needle. This is the stitch that was just on the left needle. We just knit into that. We're going to come down here and pick up this one that looks like it's 2 rows below. And we're going to pick up the left side of that stitch, or the left leg. So out of the 2 strands that are on this stitch, we're going to pick up the one that is on the left and lift it up with our left needle and knit into that as normal. So I'm going to go ahead and knit across the row and show you what it looks like. So here is our lifted increase right here, and you can see how that the stitch that was below this stitch right here is now pulled over to the side a little bit and has another stitch coming out the top. And the same thing on this side. Here's the original stitch, and then the stitch that was below it is pulled over to the left with a stitch coming out the top. And this little shifting to the right and the left of these stitches is what kind of makes this column right here, this upside down column that looks like one column, it makes it a little bit wonky looking because we need to go back through here and just tug on the stitches that are looking like they're a little tighter. Just give them a little tug on both sides, and that will even out the look of your increase line. So this is why I love this increase, particularly for top-down raglan sweaters, because it just creates this nice, smooth, clean line with a very simple look to it. It doesn't have a lot of other things going on. And at the same time, if you have some stitches that are a little bit loose, they appear a little bit loose, we can come over here and pull on what is actually the other leg of that loop on the side over here and straighten that out. And that is caused because when we lift the stitches for the increase, it does kind of stretch them a little bit to one side. And so we're just resituating them so they are sitting straight as opposed to being pulled to one side. So now what I'm going to do is, because with a raglan increase, which is what this is kind of demonstrating here, we don't increase on every single row, I'm going to go ahead and purl back across this way, and then I will show you those increases again on the next row. Alright, so I'm back across to this side. I'm going to go ahead and knit each stitch across until I have 1 stitch left before my marker. Alright, so I have 1 stitch left before the marker, and of course this is the one we're going to work the right lifted increase into, because as you can see, all the stitches on this side of the line are going to the right. So again, here's the loop on my needle that's currently sitting on the needle right now. And what we want to do is we want to pick up the right leg of the stitch below. So this right here is the stitch below. We want to pick up the right leg of that stitch, lift it up, and gently place it on the left needle. And then we're going to knit into that stitch as if it were a regular stitch, lift it off the needle, knit into the original stitch, and lift it off the needle. And that creates our right lifted increase. So just one more time, I'm going to go ahead and undo that so you can see it again. So here we have the stitch that is on the needle, and we have the stitch below the one on the needle. We're going to pick up the right leg, or the right strand of the stitch below the one on the needle, put it up on the needle, knit into it as normal, and then knit into the original stitch that was above it. Alright, so now let's slip the marker. We're going to work the left lifted increase. And like I said before, the left lifted increase is a little different because we are coming at it from this direction as opposed to coming at it, towards the increase line like we do on this side. So we're going to knit the stitch first, And then, as you can see, this strand right here, this loop is the stitch on my needle. This one is the stitch that was on this needle just a minute ago before I knit into it. And then this stitch right here is the stitch that we are lifting. So it's 2 rows below what's on the needle because we just knit into the stitch that was just on this needle. So we're going to the stitch 2 rows below, and we're going to pick up the left leg of that stitch and knit into it. So one more time, I'm just going to undo that so you can see it again. And what we're going to do is we're going to knit the stitch as normal. Then we're going to come down here and pick up not the loop on the needle, not the stitch we just knit into that's sitting right below the needle, but the stitch below that. We're going to pick up the left strand or the left leg of that stitch onto the left needle and knit into it. So I'm going to go ahead and knit across the rest of my row, and then I will show you what that looks like. Alright, so there is my finished little swatch of lifted increases for this imaginary raglan line. And normally this would actually go this direction, where this would be the neckline, and then this would be the sleeve, and this would be the body of the sweater. And then, of course, you would finish it as a normal raglan sleeve shaping. But you can use this lifted increase to replace a make one left or a make one right. So for a make one right, you would replace it with the right lifted increase, and for a make one left, you would replace it with the left lifted increase. So you can see this neat, clean line that we get from increasing in this way, and yet it's very flat, very smooth, no bumps, no weird stitches anywhere. It just lays very smooth and very clean without any kind of visible increases. You can see that we're getting new stitches coming off of that line, but you don't see the actual increase itself because it blends in so nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what is your favorite increase in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.